All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. We're going to go ahead and get started. Others may be continuing to join the webinar throughout, but I want to be conscious of everybody's time and go ahead and get things kicked off here. So just a few housekeeping items to start. All attendees have been placed on mute, and I ask that you please keep your microphones off for the duration of the presentation to eliminate any background noise. We will open up time at the end for questions and answers, and you can also use the chat feature throughout the webinar. This webinar will be recorded so that we can share it with others who were not able to join us today. So today we're going to be talking about interview preparation. In the age of coronavirus, many people have found themselves looking for new jobs unexpectedly. And now when we combine that with social and physical distancing, the search for a new role can seem really daunting. So I want to provide you all with some best practices and tips for being successful, especially when most of this process is going to exist in the virtual world. So in going through today's webinar, we're going to cover some common interview questions and how to answer those, how to prepare for behavioral interviews, and also questions to ask about the role and questions to ask the interviewer. And then at the end, I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you have about a question that maybe you have struggled with answering in the past, and also some salary negotiation tips. This presentation is being brought to you by HiConsulting Services, a Phoenix-based career services firm. We believe that you have the power to make your career dreams come true, and we help you get there with professional career services, including resume creation, LinkedIn profile optimization, interview preparation, cover letter copywriting, mentoring, and more. We are committed to our clients and their success. So just a little bit about me. My name is Hillary, and I'm the president and founder of HiConsulting Services, which I opened in 2017. I have a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology, which is a fancy way of saying human resources. I have a lot of experience in operations management, sales, marketing, and HR. I'm very involved locally. I work with Local First Arizona and PHX Startup Week. I'm a board member with AZ Talent Co-op, and I also volunteer with Career Connectors. I believe we have a few friends from that organization on the call as well. When I'm not in the office, you'll find me exploring the Southwest. I love to go camping and spend time outdoors with my dogs, niece, and husband. I also ride a dirt bike and I'm always looking for suggestions of new trails. All right, so now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty here. We're going to start working through some interview preparation, starting with common questions. One of the first questions that you're likely to be asked is, tell me about yourself, or something along those lines. You want to be prepared to talk about yourself and why you're an excellent fit for that job or within the organization. You want to try and answer questions about yourself without giving out too much or too little personal information. You can start by sharing some of your personal interests and experiences that don't relate directly to work, such as a favorite hobby or a brief account of where you grew up, your education, and what motivates you. You could also share some fun facts that showcase your personality to make the interview a little bit more interesting. If it feels daunting to generate this information from scratch, you can rely on a simple formula to construct your answer. The formula that I suggest that we use is the past, present, and future, which is a way to share key background points while ending on a high note. You want to begin with a brief overview of where you are now, which could include something like your current job, a reference to a personal hobby or passion, reference how you got there, right? That's your past. And how you could talk about your education there, an important experience, maybe an internship or even a volunteer experience that led you to where you are now. And then finish with touching on a goal for the future. You get bonus points if you're able to identify how the position you're applying for aligns with how you envision your future. So really, no matter how you choose to respond, if you write out your answer in advance and then read it out loud to ensure it ensures a natural sounding tone. You want to keep it short and sweet and don't come across as, the type of person who endlessly drones on about themselves. You really want to be able to communicate this message that this is who you are, this is what you're looking for, and this is what you can bring to the table to help benefit the organization. So some more common questions. One that you might encounter is, how did you hear about the position? So this is a perfect opportunity to stand out and show your passion for and connection with the company. It might seem like an innocuous interview question, but it's actually a perfect opportunity for you to showcase the research that you've done in preparation and set yourself apart from other candidates. For an example, maybe you found out about this gig through a friend or professional contact. You could name drop that person, then share why you're so excited about it. If you discovered the company through an online event or an article that you read, then you can share that. Even if you found the listing through a random job board, then share, what specifically caught your eye about the role. So again, specificity is going to come up over and over again. You want to be as specific as possible with some of these stories that you're sharing. And then you're likely going to be asked, what do you know about the company? Interviewers will ask this question to test your preparation for the interview and help weed out candidates that maybe aren't as serious about the position or the role. So any candidate can read and regurgitate the company's about page. So when interviewers ask this, they aren't necessarily trying to gauge whether or not you understand the company's about page or their two-sentence tagline. They really want to know whether you care about the organization and how do you relate to their mission, vision, and values. So start with a line that shows that you understand the company's goals using a couple keywords and phrases from the website, and then make it personal to you. So the reason why it's important to use some of those key phrases from the company's website is that you want to be speaking their language. You want to be saying the things that they're hoping and wanting to hear. You could say something like, I'm personally drawn to this mission because, or I really believe in this approach because, and then share a personal example or two. That's going to help build that personal relationship between you and that company or organization. So a couple more common questions here. Why do you want this job? It's always a difficult one to prepare for when we're not sure which role you're going to be interviewing about, but there should be some general things that you're really attracted to and what makes you a good fit for these roles and why you applied to this position. So this question gives you an opportunity to show the interviewer what you know about the job and the company. So take time before the interview to thoroughly research the company and its products or services. Again, that mission, vision, and value of the company, and be specific about what makes you a good fit for the role, and mention aspects of the company and position that appeal to you most. Really similar to that position or that question that we just covered on the previous slide. And again, why should we hire you? This is one of my favorite questions to prepare for because it almost sounds like an intimidation question, right? It's like, why should we hire you? And while it might sound like an intimidation tactic, interviewers generally bring this up to offer you another opportunity to explain why you're the best candidate. Your answer should address the skills and experience you offer and why you're a good culture fit. So what are your goals for the future? Sometimes people don't like this one too much, especially when we're uncertain of what the future is going to look like. But really, hiring managers ask this question about future goals to determine whether or not you're looking to stay with the company long term. And especially, if you're applying for gig roles, 1099 roles, individual contributor roles, it's okay to talk about your personal goals. But otherwise, companies are looking for candidates that will stay, for 5 or more years typically, and that does depend on the position, of course. Additionally, this question can be used to gauge your ambition, your expectations for your career, and your ability to plan ahead. So the best way to handle this question is to determine your current career trajectory and how this this role plays into you reaching your ultimate goals. So it's okay to say that, you might be moving on from this role in the future, but then you need to have that next step in place. That's what the company is going to be looking for, is that long-term career plan. And then, certainly a difficult question to answer a lot of times is, why are you leaving, or why have you left your job? With coronavirus, a lot of people have been laid off from their positions. They've been furloughed. Their positions have been terminated. So that's certainly one that is going to be widely expected and received right now. In addition to that, you might have an employment gap on your resume, which is completely fine. We're going to be seeing a lot of that moving forward, over the next couple of years here. So don't worry too much about those. Just be open and honest. So when you are asked about why you're moving on from your current position, stick with the facts. Be direct and focus your interview and focus your answer on the future. So we don't want to say anything negative about why we're leaving. If it wasn't the best of circumstances, try and put a positive slant on your response. Don't say, I hated my manager or something like that. We'll try and spin that in a direction of if there wasn't any future opportunities for growth, and so that's why we've decided to pursue other opportunities. We certainly don't want to bash the current organization, colleagues, or supervisor at all. An employer is not likely to bring on someone who talks negatively about a past company. Okay, so now we're going to move into behavioral interview questions. Those ones that we were answering before, those common questions, that was more about whether or not you're a fit for the organization. It was some of those screening questions that you might go through. The first round interview that, it might be one of those 10, 15-minute phone calls that you have. Now moving into the behavioral questions, this would likely be a second round interview where you're asked to share some really specific examples about work that you've done in the past. So for behavioral interview questions, there's another formula. You guys will find out that I like formulas. We want to use the STAR formula, and this is where we're talking about the situation, the task, the action, and the result. This formula is a great way to show that your qualifications align with the job that you're applying for. And the best way to prepare for these is to create a list of examples to share your story. So you can just start thinking about some of those key milestones throughout your career, some big successes, big wins that you've had, using clear, concise, real-life examples that highlight situations where you were successful. So again, you want to take note of this. You can take a screenshot. I'm also going to email the deck at the end of this call. But you want to use the STAR formula where you're talking about the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So we're going to go through a couple practice questions using this formula. So tell me about a time that you worked effectively under pressure. So what does the interviewer actually want to know? Well, they want to know how well you can work under pressure. So give an example of how you've dealt with pressure when you had and how you responded. So just as an example, something that you might respond would be something sounding like this. I had been working on a key project that was scheduled for delivery to the client in 60 days. My supervisor came to me and said that we needed to speed it up and be ready in 45 days while keeping our other projects on time. I made it into a challenge for my staff, and we effectively added just a few hours to each of our schedules and got the job done in 42 days by sharing the workload. Of course, I had a great group of people to work with, but I think that my effective allocation of tasks was a major component that contributed to the success of the project. So we're talking about the situation that we had a project timeline moved up. Then we're talking about the task at hand that we had to complete this project within a certain timeline. The action we took with motivating the staff to meet the challenge, and then the result was that we delivered the project even before what the client had asked for. So how do you handle a challenge? Give an example. Now, what does the interviewer actually want to know? They want to know how you'll react in a difficult situation. So you want to focus on how you resolved a challenging situation and then how you responded to those situations as well. So an example response to this might sound like something like this. One time, my supervisor needed to leave town unexpectedly, and we were in the middle of complicated negotiations with a new sponsor. I was tasked with putting together a PowerPoint presentation just from the notes he had left and some briefing with his manager. My presentation turned out successfully. We got the sponsorship and the management team even recommended me for an award. Just going through a couple more behavioral interview examples here. A difficult one to answer is, how have you ever made a mistake and how did you handle it? This is a difficult one because we are talking about something negative that happened that we did. And so what the interviewer is actually wanting to know, and we know this, nobody's perfect, everybody makes mistakes. So they want to know how you handled the situation when you made an error, rather than the fact that the error happened. So an example response to this question might sound something like this. I once misquoted the fees for a membership to the club where I worked. I explained my mistake to my supervisor, who appreciated my coming to him and my honesty. He told me to offer to waive the application fee for a new member. The member joined the club despite my mistake. My supervisor was understanding, and although I felt bad that I had made the mistake, I learned to pay close attention to the details to be sure to give accurate information in the future. So another common question here is, give an example of how you worked on a team. What the interviewer is looking for here is how well you work with others and whether or not you're able to cooperate with other team members. An example response to this question might sound something like this. During my last semester in college, I worked as part of a research team in the history department. The professor leading the project was writing a book on the development of language in Europe in the Middle Ages. We were each assigned different sections to focus on, and I suggested that we meet independently before our weekly meeting with the professor to discuss our progress and help each other out if we were having difficulties. The professor really appreciated the way we worked together, and it helped to streamline his research as well. He was ready to start on his final copy months ahead of schedule because of the work we helped him with. So I just want to take a note too that with some of these responses that we just reviewed for the behavioral interviewing questions, we want to use really specific examples from our past, but they don't have to be from our most recent position or even from a professional situation. They can be from a volunteer experience, they can be from college, they can be from parenting at home. There's a lot of different ways that we can pull examples to show how we handle some of these situations. And again, that's the most critical component to all of these behavioral questions, is talking about the situation, the task, the action, and the result. And we want positive results at the end of each one of these examples. So going into some questions about the role. So when you go through interviews, you're usually asked towards the end, do you have any questions? And so it's really important to come prepared with questions. Even if all of your questions are addressed, you want something physical on a pad, a notebook, something like that that you can refer to and sort of have this list of questions that you've come prepared with. And even if you address all the questions in the end, that you can say, I came prepared with some of these questions, but we discussed all of them in the interview, so I don't have any further questions. So just to help keep you prepared, here are some questions you can ask. You can ask them about the day-to-day responsibilities of the position. What does a typical day look like? These are really important to make sure that you're a good fit for the organization. You can ask why the position is open, if it's a new role that's been created, or why the person who held it before might have left. Setting expectations is really important too. So if you're hired for the role, what would they want you to achieve? You could be more specific and say 30, 60, 90 days. And then also asking about performance reviews. That is really important too, because it does set up that time frame for when you're expected to hit some milestones, and then also renegotiate the terms of your employment. And then of course, just asking how you can be successful in the job. What is the single most important indicator for success in this job? By getting the answer to that question, the sooner the better, then we know how to formulate some of your responses to help reinforce that you have that particular skill in all of your other interview question answers. And then it's really good to ask questions to the interviewer specifically. So not just about the role or the organization, but to that direct individual. So you can ask them about their personal experience with the company, asking them what the company organizational structure is like, what is the management style like. You can ask them what makes them happy to come into work each day. Don't ask questions that you should already know. So for this, how long have you been at the company? If they start off, their introductory, hi, my name is Susie. I've been with, XYZ company for 10 years, then don't ask them how long they've been in the company at the end of the interview. But you can certainly have this as a go-to question if needed. And also asking questions directly to the interviewer is a great way to get some background about the company culture and whether or not that company is going to be a good fit for you. Then also if it's, someone on the executive team, VP or above, asking about the company's goals for the upcoming year is a really valuable way to make an impression as well, because it shows you're investing in the future and learning about the future of the company. And there's nothing more than a business owner that likes to talk about than their goals for their own company in the upcoming years. All right, so before we open things up for question and answer, we're just going to cover some salary negotiation here. So a lot of times companies will ask, what is your salary expectation? And interviewers ask this question to make sure that your expectations are in line with the amount that they budgeted for the role. So you want to give a salary range, and you don't want it to be exceedingly lower or higher than what the market value is for that position. That gives the impression that you don't know your worth in the marketplace. So you want to research the typical compensation range for the role that you're applying for, and then go towards the higher side. So as an example, you would say my salary expectation is between $50,000 and $60,000, which is the average salary for a candidate with my level of experience in this city. Location is incredibly important for salary negotiation because different states have different minimum wage compensations, but then also different pay structures. For example, in Arizona, we can pay on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly or bi-monthly basis. In Massachusetts, you have to pay every other week. You can't be on a bi-monthly pay schedule. So there's differences, in the ways that compensation is calculated based on the state or city that you're in. So you want to make sure that you've done your research. Using tools such as Glassdoor can be really helpful, but again, just pay attention to that level of experience, the size of the organization, whether or not it's a nonprofit, and then certainly if they're a public company or release their salary compensation ranges, then do that research ahead of time. A lot of times, it's difficult to understand what value the company is offering if it's not monetary. So this is a tool that you can use because not all compensation is in the form of dollars in your paycheck. It could be unlimited PTO. It could be, health coverage that's fully covered. It could be remote work. Remote work might be, invaluable to somebody, whereas, going into the office might be preferred by somebody else. So making a list of the things that you must have is really important, but you also want to identify things that you don't want. For example, do you not want to have to go into the office? And you put that in the things you don't want to have box. And you can help use this as a structure and even assign monetary value to these items if you want. But that will help you negotiate salary and saying, okay, well, I'm giving up, some of these things that would be nice, but this isn't that important, so it's not worth that much to me. This will really help you when you're coming down to signing that contract and determining whether or not this is a role you want to accept based on the salary that they are offering. So that is what we've got here for the interview preparation webinar. Again, went through some common questions and some of the ways to answer those questions, preparing for the behavioral interviews, and then salary negotiation. So now I would invite any of you to open up your microphones, or you can utilize the chat box. I'm happy to stay online for a little bit here and answer any specific questions that you have about interview preparation. I am going to go ahead and stop the recording at this time.